So, what stereotypes do you have about British people? Do you agree with the following? For each one, talk or think to yourself about this sentence and decide, do you think it is probably true, probably false, might have a grain of truth in it? That means it might be a little bit true. Or do you think it is completely false? Or perhaps you have no idea. That's also a good answer. Remember that stereotypes are not true, and they are not true for the whole population. So just as we can't say all Japanese people have rice for breakfast, so we probably can't say all British people love tea. The only thing you have to do is to say, well, do you think that when other people, for example, French, Japanese, Germans, Chinese, people of other countries, when other people are talking about the British, is this what other people say about British people? So there are two levels. One level is this what the stereotype is? We're not actually saying this is true for all the people. So let's look at the statements and then we'll read them a second time, and I'll tell you what I tried to find out from the internet about this stereotype to see if I could find evidence for it. And also I'll tell you my idea. So here's number one. What do you think? British people love tea. Probably true, probably false. Might have a grain of truth in it. Completely false. Number two, British people love their pets, such as cats and dogs, more than other countries do. I don't know if I can scroll down or not. Yes, I can. Number three, British people love the royal family. Number four, British people are very direct and they do not waste time making polite small talk. For example, talk about the weather or talk about unimportant things. Number five, British people are fond of alcohol, beer and lager, and sometimes drink too much. Number six, many British people live in cottages or countries in the countryside. Number seven, British people are kind to the environment. Number eight, people from the United Kingdom, that's the same, I'm going to use that to mean British for now, are open-minded and accept others easily. Number nine, British people are very punctual and consider this a virtue, but it's okay to be a little late for a party at someone's home. Number 10, British people apologize all the time, even if they have not done anything wrong. Number 11, the British are very conscious of social class. Number 12, British people often come across as rude. Number 13, British people have no sense of humour. Number 14, British people love football, which is the British name for soccer. Number 15, most British people have a posh accent. So stop the video now and go back, see if you can reply. Do you think these things are true, false, a little bit true, or you have no idea? And then let's go back and let's use our research. Are you ready? So, number one, British people love tea. Well, you might be surprised at this. Can you see this list from Wikipedia about the countries which drink the most tea? Tea consumption. Turkey is number one with 3.16 kilograms of tea for one person in 1 year. And the United Kingdom is number three with only 1.94 kilograms. Ireland is number two. Well, Irish culture is very close. It's kind of very close to British culture. So I'm happy to see that Ireland is in number two place. Also, I have my great, great, great grandfather. Some people in my family came from Ireland about 200 years ago, quite a long time ago, but I have some Irish blood and I'm proud of that. So let's go to number 2. So I think as number 2, we can say, yes, it's true. The popular idea is that British people drink a lot of tea. Of course, tea does not grow in Britain. Tea is grown only in Asia, really. Britain is too cold and wet for tea. So we're already in the consideration of how Britain has taken products from other countries, not always in a fair way. So when we say British tea, it's actually Chinese tea, Indian tea, Japanese tea, which is imported to Britain. But it still became part of our identity. Number 2, British people love having pets like dogs and cats. Well, over 62% of families have a pet of some kind. But if we look at which country has the most dogs, it's actually the USA. And Britain is not even in the top 5 of countries per person, of dogs per person. That's probably because so many people live in the city. 86% of British people live in cities or areas with a little, not much countryside. So the countries like Romania, Hungary, Poland, Australia, Portugal, Canada have probably got more land, more country land, and so it's easier to keep a dog in those countries. Number 3, British people love the royal family. Well, yes, but let's look at what's happening over time. In 1983, 86% of Britons believed that the monarchy, the royal family, was very important or quite important. By 2021, this had dropped to 55%, with 25% saying it was not at all important, or the monarchy should be abolished. Goodbye, monarchy. This was according to the British Social Attitudes Survey in 2023, February 15. The royal family's image was damaged when Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle decided to stop doing their official duties as royal family members. About 3 years ago, they moved to the States because the royal family had not treated Meghan very kindly and because they found that they wanted privacy for raising their family. So now they are living as a private family in the United States. And I think this helped to show that the royal family are not actually perfect. Number 4, British people are very direct and do not waste time making polite small talk. Well, I think it's true that we like to talk about the weather and we like to talk about general things. Oh, what a lovely dress you are wearing. Oh, what delicious tea. The other day, I saw a very interesting movie. So we do like to talk about things which are not very important. But on a recent survey, this custom about chatting to people who you do not know seems to be getting less popular. Maybe the millennials, those people born in 2000 and younger than 23, may be less keen on talking to people they don't know. Here are the results. Men were also less keen to talk to people they don't know than women would. 1 in 4 British people would prefer not to talk to their hairdresser. So that's about 70%. This is a survey saying, would you talk to your neighbour? And 77% said, yes, I would talk to my neighbour if I was going for a walk in my neighbourhood. If a person came to fix something in your house, like Shuri repair person, would you talk to them? 70% of the people said yes, I would talk to that person about the weather, movies, shopping, something like that. But somebody who's cutting your hair, 68% said yes. Somebody serving you at the supermarket, 66% of people would still say, yeah, lovely day, how are you, to the person at the supermarket. And a colleague, if you are in the room at work, 59% would talk to a colleague in the room at work. It's still well more than half the people. A bar person in the pub, so imagine you're in the bar, you've gone for a drink and you're alone, would you talk to the server? 56% of people said yes. So it's still quite a lot of people. A taxi driver, 56% of people said yes. So I think it's probably still more than, for example, Japanese would generally want to talk to a person who they didn't know. But a dentist who is cleaning your teeth, most people said no. Obviously, it's difficult to talk to the dentist while they're cleaning your teeth. That's quite funny. Other people on the bus, only 34% of people said yes. So if you are studying abroad and you start a conversation with somebody on the bus, it's probably slightly unusual. Most people would rather that you didn't do that. But if you go to a pub and you start a conversation with somebody you don't know, that's quite okay. Do be careful. Don't go off to a private place with somebody who you don't know until you know them very well. Let's look at number 5. British people are fond of beer and lager and sometimes drink too much. I'm afraid this is a little true. Well, if you look at the amount which is drunk per year, we drink 11.4 litres on average of alcohol, and that's about average for our place in the world. Italy, people only drink 7.5 litres, but people in Lithuania, that's going north to the north and darker in the winter countries, they drink a little bit more, 15 litres per year. And if you want to check, you can find this homepage. Reports from a social research centre in the Midlands, in the city of Wakefield, say that the city is full of people who are drunk on a Friday night. The police report that small crimes tend to be committed on a Friday night by people who are drunk. So there is some truth in the stereotype that British people drink too much when they are out. Number 6, many British people live in castles or cottages. Here's a lovely cottage. It means a countryside house, sometimes with a roof made of grass. Basically, it's made of dry grass. And so do most of us live in the countryside? Sadly, no. 84% live in cities. Some areas, a lot of people own a second home or holiday home. That's nice for those people, but it can be poor for the local community if there are few schools because everybody has a holiday home. They don't live there all the time. British people are kind to the environment, not especially. The emission of CO2 per person is about 7.5 per person. Japan is 9.6, so it's a lot more. But Britain is number 17 for CO2, where number 1 is very bad, but there's like 60 countries in this table. So Britain is not near the top of the eco-friendly countries. It's not so very eco-friendly. Part of the backstory to this is that the European rules about the environment are quite strict. And right now, the British government is trying to not join the European rules. They're trying to make new laws, which will mean that Britain does not have to obey the European rules about the environment. And the good side of this, of course, is that then business can do exactly what it likes, but this is also not good for the environment. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will not attend the COP27 summit about climate change coming up in November. This gives the impression that the current UK government are not willing to work with other countries to tackle climate change. Some climate protesters were put in prison by the government, even if it's just for a short time. Britain is not that eco-friendly compared with countries such as Germany or Finland in terms of the current law. Number 8, Brits are open-minded and accept others easily. Well, yes and no. Here are some statistics from government opinion polls comparing 2009 and more recent years. 89% claim they would be happy for their child to marry someone from another ethnic group. So almost 90% of people said, yeah, we don't mind if our son or daughter marries somebody who doesn't look like us. And 70% said, yeah, strongly, we really don't mind, we really don't care, we'd be happy to mix up our nationality and our ethnicity. This is an improvement from 2009, when 75% said they would be happy overall and 41% strongly. Similarly, the majority, 93%, disagree with the statement, to be British, you have to be white. Most people don't agree. They think you could be black, you could be Asian, and you are still British. That is the majority view. And of course, now the Prime Minister is of Asian heritage, so that's a very strong yes for mixed ethnic identity as being a British identity. The proportion who agree with the statement has fallen. So the people who are negative about their identity and want to kind of hold on to British being a white identity has become a very small percent. Now it's only 3% of people, but those people are quite noisy. So you still could see somebody on a demonstration who is being noisy about their identity. After Brexit, Brexit is the leaving of the European community, there has been a move to withdraw from the European Agreement on Human Rights. So we're not quite as good in terms of the way that we would accept refugees as people who are coming in. We might welcome British people who look different if they're coming in to work, but if they're coming in as a refugee, it's becoming more difficult than it could be in, for example, Germany. Some of the other countries in Europe are also finding it difficult to accept large numbers of people coming in. Number 9, when going to a party, British people consider it polite to arrive a few minutes after the stated time. Well, I was quite surprised about this. It depends on the event. For a work event, you should be on time or early. The same is true for a date. If you're meeting outside the home, you should be on time or early. But it's bad to keep your friend waiting outdoors. But for a home party, my feeling is it's a bit more flexible. In my age and my social group, being a few minutes late is considered good manners. In the case of a dinner party, if you are going to sit down and eat together, you do not want to be so early if your host is still preparing. Being on time is good manners, but 1 or 2 minutes after the time is fine. Only if it's more than 15 minutes after the time, the host might be worried about you. If it's an informal party and you're not going to sit down and eat together, then it's okay to arrive later. In this article about politeness from an online magazine, it says British people are punctual. So don't take my word for it. I might be a bit less punctual than some British people. Number 10, British people apologize all the time, even if they haven't done anything wrong. I think so, yes. According to this article by the BBC, the average British person says sorry about 8 times a day. Sometimes we say sorry when it's not an apology, it's just a way to show sympathy. So I might say, I'm sorry about what happened. You know, maybe your friend's dog died, and you could say, I'm sorry your dog died. This is not an apology. This is sympathy expression. In one survey, it was found that in the situation such as sneezing, achoo, oh, sorry, or finding a mistake another person made, or being pushed by another person, it was natural for British people to say sorry, and more British people than American people would say sorry in these situations. So, for example, the average American, if you push into them, they wouldn't say sorry, but average British might say sorry. I think also many British, if you push them, would say, look where you're going. So I personally, I wouldn't say sorry if somebody pushed me. Number 11, British people come across as rude. I think no, but there is an exception if a British person drinks too much alcohol. They might be rude if they are drunk. Also, we might be rude to our friends as a sign of friendship. Sometimes this is called banter. For example, criticizing somebody's clothes, but in a jokey way, saying, you're no good at this, but actually it means you think they are good. So there is a certain way in which you can be a bit rude. Actually, it could mean that you're close. British people have a reputation for drinking too much beer and behaving badly when they go on cheap holidays in Spain and Greece. So that's part of the British class system, possibly, but actually all classes are quite capable of abuse of alcohol leading to bad manners, if I'm honest. Number 12, British people are very conscious of social class. Well, I think this is quite complicated. Here I found a nice visual saying the upper class is the class composed of the richest members of society, and old money means that your grandfather's grandfather's grandfather have been in the same place and owned a lot of land, whereas new money means that somewhere in the recent past, your ancestors were in business and made a lot of money. And so the upper class still prefer old money. I think this is becoming untrue. And it's quite interesting. I think now we're coming to respect money more than class. People are still conscious of accent. The last few prime ministers have had very upper class accents, upper class education, and the last few prime ministers have been from a wealthy background, including Rishi Sunak, the current prime minister. People don't like to talk about it. There's a BBC article which I'm referencing here, which shows that children often stay in the same job and the same geographical area that their parents live, and this tends to keep people in the same social class. COVID, economic problems, and the free market economic policy of the last 3-4 prime ministers, so that's in the last 8 years or 10 years or more, it's become more difficult to change your class, to improve your social status has become more difficult than it used to be. British people have no sense of humour. I think this is untrue. When I asked my friends a few years ago what defines British people, they all said humour was one of the things which makes us British. And this is also something you can see if you start watching videos about British identity. You can read more about different kinds of humour if you want to look up this webpage. And on to number 14. British people love football, which is the British name for soccer. I think this is true. It might be even more popular than cricket and rugby now. There are books written about football and English identity. In recent years, there have been some negative associations of racism with a small number of football fans. At the same time, there are very good relationships which grow quickly if people support the same team or play together. And for example, Marcus Rashford is one of the people who's become a real hero of the British team for standing up to racism and having a very good following as a British football player and member of the national team. Number 15, most British people have a posh accent. I don't think so. The accent of Southern England, which is sometimes called received pronunciation or BBC English, it's considered posh by some people in other countries. Posh means upper class or good or socially advantageous. It's going to bring you something good if you speak like that. I think that still this kind of accent can bring an advantage, but actually most people don't speak like this in Britain. There are about 40 regional accents or more. All of them are British, and many people can use 2 accents. They could speak like I speak close to received pronunciation, this kind of BBC English. I'm quite close to what that should be. But many people speak both this and another dialect. Like they might also talk like a bit like this, which is kind of South London like. And if you want to study this a bit more, it's really, really interesting to look at the picture. Down here, 6 ways to divide British accents. So people in the south and north sound different. Poor, like pour a cup of tea, and poor meaning not rich. Do they sound the same? In Scotland, no. Poor means people who don't have a lot of money, and poor means tea. But in the south of England, it sounds the same. Poor people don't have money, pour your tea, sound the same. How about book and spook? Spook means ghost, book means book. And in England, people would say book, spook. But in Scotland, many people will say spook, spook. Read your book, read your book, read your book. So that's Scottish English. How about spar and spar? Spar, that's Scottish pronunciation. So you can hear the R is a little bit rolled in Scottish pronunciation. And so as you go to the north, there's definitely a difference. In the south, I'm going to the spa. Spa means onsen. Spar means fight. How about one and one? Do one and one sound the same? Yes, in Scotland, yes, in England, but in this part, in the Midlands, people will say one. I think people, I don't really know. I think people say one, and it's meaning 1, 2, 3, I think. And so in this pink area, 1 means kachimashita, and 1 means ichi. That's using Japanese. So how about the orange, this spelling, do put and but rhyme? And so in this area, in the Midlands, the middle of England, but, put, put. For example, put. Oh, we're gonna do it, but I couldn't. I was going to do it, but I couldn't. I was going to do it, but I couldn't. But so it's a kind of flat sound in but in this middle place. And how about do bath and trap have the same vowel? In the south, where I come from, basically, though I went to school up here in Scotland, but my voice is mostly from the south. Do bath and trap have the same vowel? No, not in London. Trap, catch, bath, bath. But in most of the Midlands and Scotland, bath, bath, take a bath. Don't be caught in the trap. It sounds the same. So that's about accent. Here are some posh schoolboys from Eton, and that's all I've got in my answers for you today. So thank you for listening. See you in class.